Brian, hi. It's so great to have this sort of fireside chat time between takes here as we record Flamenco Americano, our forthcoming CD at the University of Arizona in Tucson, where you're a tenured professor. We've talked about Duke Ellington and the Washingtonians in the 1920s, and what an influence Mr. Ellington's music has been in my life, and being really the jettison for creating Caliendo World Music Publishing back in 1998, that his written music sounded like inspired improvisation. The notion here is that we're recording 14 tracks. Many of them have written out solos. The idea is that you, the professional, are recording these solos as they exist in the published sheet music and making them sound like inspired improvisation. How do you do that? What tips could you give our audience today who may be not familiar, can improvise, but have an opportunity to play published music that has the written solo to make it sound more inspired?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, all music is improvisation. At some point, any composer, it's just thoughts in their mind. And I think that inasmuch as any composer might write a melody, a primary melody, we might call it the A theme or the B theme, or it might be something that is developed throughout the course of performance, there's always something that's improvised afterward. It could be Mozart, for instance. He gives us a fanfare. And then he decides it's time for something frivolous. And this is just off the top of his head. It's complete patter singing. So I think if you interpret all music as if it is not only a primary idea, but then something that is just frivolous fantasy or interpretation and soloing on top of the changes, it makes it easier. For instance, one of the tracks that we recorded, spectacular work, something that Christopher and I played many, many years ago. The way I approach it is I'll look at the primary melody, which of course is great. It has spectacular articulation, and you have to get into the spirit of that, which can be difficult for a classical musician. We might want to play, which is a little bit stiff, but if you can change and have your articulation, and of course a lot of that comes from your articulation training and what syllables you use, but if you can use the color not only on the articulated notes themselves, but also the color that happens between the notes, which is where the music really comes alive. And we might consider that to be purely rubato or tenuto, but all of that is part of the sort of improvisatory nature of the piece. And of course the work starts off with that melody in the background, with a beautiful haunting sort of guitar, and we would call it an ostinato, but it's setting the stage for this emotion. Now as you go through the music and you develop, and then we get to the solo section, it would be very easy for someone to think to just play it in its rhythm as it appears, but these are separate thoughts. The first one, that's three levels, three terraces of thoughts as we rise along. What can make it more organic is to actually phrase between those, because it's one thought, just by that really simple little thing, taking in essence 2 extra breaths, one that we might not consider because we see a tie. All of a sudden then there's something you can do, you can develop that, and that's what Christopher's written out in such a spectacular way, completely organic, natural, and completely honest solo.